Today's video, we're talking all about biggest lessons learned from living with a chronic illness. Don't swipe away, don't skip this. In case you are currently not living with a chronic illness, the reality is that you probably know somebody that is facing an invisible illness or a visible illness of some kind, because the statistics show that I think it's more than 50% of the world, excuse me, actually has identified as being disabled. I hate using that term, but living with some sort of illness that would make them need accommodations. Hold on. All of a sudden, got a cough. Okay. Apologize for that. We'll see if we can edit that out in the final copy. So, the reason why I want to share this with you is because as we go through life, chances are that you may have something that comes upon you, or maybe right now, this is you, this is your life, because I never expected to be talking about this topic because, by all accounts, I was completely healthy. I lived a pretty blessed life and really didn't have to work very hard to maintain my health. And so, given that, this particular topic was not something that I had ever prepared for. Now, depending on where you are in the world, what's going on with your family history, your own personal life, with your own health and wellness journey, that may or may not be the case for you. But right here, right now, I want you to know that regardless of how big the impact is in terms of things that you're struggling with, so whether it is a chronic illness, whether it is physical, mental, emotional, whether it's long-standing from childhood or something that's just brand new diagnosed when you're in your adulthood, regardless of your age, I see you, I feel you, and I understand what it's like, at least from a small perspective of my own personal experience. So here's the caveat. I am not a doctor. This is not, any sort of health advice. This is strictly from the perspective of me, from my learned experience, having several chronic illnesses that I, by and large, have overcome. That's not the thing that I wanted to talk about today. If you're interested in kind of my protocols and what I've done in order to manage and deal with a lot of these conditions. So I've been formally diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I suffered from severe depression and anxiety, had panic attacks that made me feel like I was dying, and was suffering. Okay. And I had migraines, headaches, neuralgia, which is nerve pain, and could barely leave my house 7 years ago. Led to a massive breakdown. So all of these symptoms that I was taking a lot of medication for every single day, including Botox for the migraines, about 2 years later, was essentially symptom free. Okay, symptom free. And so now I manage that actively, proactively through a number of different things, which again, I'm not going to share today, but if you're interested, let me know in the comments and I'm more than happy to do a video on it. So the 4 biggest lessons that I wanted to share today. Number 1, you are not your circumstance. You're not the situation, and you are certainly not a diagnosis. And so this also goes into number 2, okay, which is that your illness, whatever the condition is, right? It does not define you. It does not define me. It does not define my identity. So here's what I want you to understand. At the time that I had the greatest amount of pain and suffering from the pain, because pain is inevitable in life, right? Pain is something that we go through. You bump your head, you do something, somebody says something to you, and it causes pain. But the suffering that happens afterwards is a choice. And I realized that when I was struggling the most, it was because I was ruminating. I was like repeating thoughts over and over again. Have you ever done this? Where you get into a fight with somebody and you're like stewing in your juices and you're repeating like, oh my gosh, they said that. I should have said that. I didn't even get to say all the stuff that I wanted to say. And you're just going on and on and on and on. This is what was happening. Except I was focusing on, I was in so much pain. I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't even think. I couldn't even have the patience to be myself. And so I was holding on to, if only they could find out what was wrong with me. For a long time, I had this mysterious chronic pain that nobody could explain. Right. And so I was looking for an answer, and I was seeking almost like the Holy Grail. Like, if I just get this diagnosis, that'll solve all my problems and all my worries and make it all go away. And then I magically got this diagnosis of fibromyalgia. You have chronic fatigue, you have irritable bowel syndrome, you name it. It's just started adding on all these labels. And I realized that these labels started to form my identity. And instead of making me feel better, it made me feel trapped, because now I felt like it's not possible for me to be a healthy, normal person, which my entire life up to that point, that's how I saw myself. Now, truth be told, a lot of the habits that I had did not align to a healthy person. I had gotten into an office job straight out of college. And so I spent the bulk of my day sitting, doing this, driving, so more sitting, right? And although I had young children at the time, I was not super active outside of chasing after, two toddlers at the time. That I had my car accident that precipitated all of this. So my identity started to get wrapped up in what it felt like and what it meant to be chronically ill, to have a diagnosis of this, that, and the other that then labeled me into what was possible. I started to put myself into this box. So the illness defined me, my identity. And as a result, it didn't matter what I tried, because I tried a lot of stuff for 4 years before I had a breakdown, and nothing seemed to work enough. They all just helped me to get through the day, right? I don't remember most of those years, which is kind of scary, because I was driving around town. I was leading teams that were responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars, working for a massive global company. And all of this was very much in a fog, because all I could do was get up and go to bed. Like that, the step in the middle was kind of just sheer survival, sheer grit and determination and perseverance and the grace of God. Okay. I just got by the skin of my teeth. So when we decide that you're a victim, right? Because that was me. I was a victim to being in a car accident. I was a victim to being stuck with my chronic illness, that I allowed what the doctors knew, which was, let's be real. The doctors know a lot, but they don't know everything. And they're learning new things every day. That what was possible for me was basically out of a book that, truthfully, nobody that had an illness had actually written that book, right? Like my doctors couldn't understand, because they'd never gone through it themselves. It was really, really hard to find somebody that could help me kind of piecemeal all these pieces together. Okay, so number one lesson, you are not your circumstance, situation, your diagnosis. Number two, that even with a diagnosis or a label on whatever it is that you're going through, right? Because insert challenge of choice. Mine just happened to be chronic illness, but you could insert COVID. You could insert death in the family. You could insert losing my job. You could insert growing old and ageism. You could, whatever the thing is, the label that you feel like is holding you back. So the second lesson, your illness, insert yours, does not define me or my identity. Okay. Because when I had my breakdown and I ended up losing my career, my label of corporate sales employee, my label of sales leader, my label of high performer and high achiever and doer, I couldn't do anything. All of those left me. So if I had allowed all of these labels to identify who I truly am inside, then I wouldn't have been able to get out of bed. And there was a long time where I actually couldn't. Okay. So these are the lessons that I've learned as a result of walking through the fire and coming out stronger, more resilient, better than ever on the other side. Number three, your brain is a supercomputer. Okay. So I know sometimes we say these things, but we don't actually understand the depth of it. That was me, right? Because I think a lot of times we just take for granted that we can do certain things. Now, I share this because my daughter also has been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, dysautonomia. So, if you know anybody that has long COVID, they may suffer from a lot of the same symptoms. It means that the things that we take for granted in our body, they just don't work, right? So, simple things like breathing, like walking, like being able to get up from the couch. All of a sudden, your blood pressure is all over the place. These are things that even just blinking, we don't think about, right? Your brain thinks about it. Your brain doesn't even, I mean, when you're born, you don't have to tell yourself how to do these things, right? So when you have something, whether it's a chronic illness or a stress trigger or change that's going on in your life, your business, your health, your relationships, your wealth, right? Who hasn't seen some kind of change, especially in the last almost 3 years now? It's been a roller coaster of different things, right? So when we recognize that our brain is a supercomputer and that when we allow ourselves, so if you want to Google this, because I'm not going to go into this particular topic, I retrained my brain. You can retrain your brain. Does it take time and effort? Yes. But does it have to take a long time? No. Okay. Because our brain is a supercomputer. Our brains are what creates everything in the world. I mean, for me, it's along with our actual creator. But beyond that, the gifts that we have, including this thing, means, so Google neuroplasticity, okay? Neuro, and then plasticity. What this means, and it's a fairly new concept, is that your brain is constantly learning, evolving, changing, and that means that nothing is like firm. Nothing is 100%. Nothing is set in stone. Your brain is constantly being molded. It's like silly putty, right? Do you remember back in the day as a kid playing with silly putty and then you would put it on stuff and it would pick up what it was exposed to? That's what's happening. That's what happened to me because I was constantly exposing my brain to, oh no, this is going to cause pain. Oh no, this is going to cause pain. Oh no, I have to fix this because I'm broken. Instead of thinking, what do healthy people do? Well, healthy people eat better and they move their body. It's pretty simple, right? They don't focus on pain because they don't really think about when they have pain that it's going to last forever and ever and ever, because that's what was happening to me. Instead, they go, oh, that hurt? Am I okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Just like when you're a little kid and you're like, you fall flat on your face as you're running, as you're trying to walk. Your parents don't go, oh my gosh, you're never going to run again. That's so painful. You got to be careful. Most parents are trying to make sure that you will get back on that horse and start running again, because the more that we practice, the better we get. And the more that we focus on the goal that we want, the closer we actually get to the goal, right? So I was focusing on pain. I was focusing on suffering. I was focusing on my illness instead of focusing on what I desired, which is I wanted to be healthy. Because to be healthy meant I wouldn't have pain. I wouldn't be living with a chronic illness. I wouldn't have suffering. I wouldn't be experiencing the symptoms. So when I reprogrammed my brain to help me, I realized I didn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting. I still had to do the work, but in the work was in retraining, in like shifting the focus of my consciousness, both my thoughts and my beliefs, in order to realize that I could unwind some of the damage that I was doing. Because remember, the actual point of contact, hello, Janie. Hello, is it Zandre? I hope I pronounced that right. That point of contact was long gone. Like the thing that caused the chronic pain, the thing that actually caused the pain in the first place, because it didn't become chronic until it kept going, was a car accident. That had happened in 2011. So for 4 years and then some, I was in this loop. I was caught. I was stuck, right? And so the minute that I decided, hey, brain, you're the one that runs the show here. Let's focus on something else. And it was a constant redirecting. So it literally was like a toddler going, what's that? What's that? What's that? And trying to, right? If anybody's been a parent, even if you haven't been a parent, we've all been children, and we know you've tried to do something that your parent has tried to, let's not do that anymore. right? It could be putting a pen inside a light socket. It could be trying to climb up and get to someplace to touch something that you're not supposed to. That redirection of that constant, like, watch and redirect, watch and redirect. That's something that helped me tremendously. And that's because your brain is a computer. It's neuroplastic, and that means it can change and evolve. It's just a matter of you changing the impulse, which is number 4, the biggest lesson. Your body is a system. Okay. So when you understand how a system works, so paying your taxes is a system, right? Like the tax system wherever you live. So me here in Canada, it's the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency. For most of my clients in the US, it's the IRS, Internal Revenue System. I think that's what the S stands for, right? They have rules. If you don't abide by the rules, you have a consequence, right? Like if you don't file certain things and they find out, you get a penalty. If you don't file by certain dates, you get in trouble, right? So your body will try to stay the way that it is. It's a system. Which is why creating new habits is so difficult, right? If you've ever tried to change your weight, your body fights it because it's a system. Okay. So you have to drastically change the input in order to almost shock the system into creating a new way of being and living. This is what I realized, that my body was a system that was now used to living a certain way. It wasn't used to living the way that I wanted to live, because remember, I didn't want to suffer anymore. I wanted to be healthy and whole and, living in joy. I wanted my old life back, but we don't really ever want the old things. We want to learn the lessons, claim the wisdom, and be improved as a result of the things that we've gone through, right? This is why history is so important. We don't want to be doomed to repeat history over and over again, right? And that's why if we don't learn from our past, we are doomed and fail to repeat it. So anytime that you see yourself in a pattern of over and over again, and I share this because this last car accident in 2011 was not my first. It was my third, and not just minor fender benders. I'm talking about like the first one was jaws of life. I don't remember. The ambulance came. I blacked out and whisked off to the hospital. The second time, I do remember, but it was a fender bender where we basically hit kind of corner to corner. Thank God it was corner to corner, because otherwise it would have been pretty bad. And I was very shaken. I was in complete shock, thought I was going to go to work. And my husband was like, no can do, lady. When I called in, because I was the boss, when I called in and said, I've been in a car accident, the next day, my second in command said, yeah, I could barely understand you, Susan. And I said, what? What do you mean? So I say all of this because when we're in the thick of it, it can be really hard to figure out which way is up, right? Because your body is a system. Your body's number one job is to keep you safe. And sometimes your body's idea of safety is not reality. My body thought keeping me safe was keeping me in chronic pain. The irony. It's madness, right? And so I want you to think for yourself, because these are patterns of behavior sometimes. Now, I'm spiritual, so sometimes the causes of diseases can be spirits. It can be spiritual, right? I mean, that's why when they say they died of a broken heart, your heart doesn't literally break, right? We've seen this in the news recently with some of these horrific things happening. And then the spouses of these poor folks that have been just killed off the face of the earth prematurely, that they are so distraught, right? Their emotions are so heavy and their spirit is broken that their heart literally doesn't want to keep going. This is part of the system, right? There's been such a shock that's happened that unfortunately, instead of being fuel and being like, come hell or high water, I'm going to hightail it to the mountain and I'm going to fix things because I have an opportunity to do that. They're so impacted that they go the other way, right? So do me a favor. Share, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you feel like there's somebody in your life that needs to hear this message, whether they live with a chronic illness or not, please, please, please feel free to go ahead and share this, because I'm on a mission to help at least 1 million people really break free. And it's not just financial freedom, although that's my biggest mission because it gives you more options and choices. It's things like this, because we are trapped in jails of our own making and we don't even realize this because the system is working against us. Does this make sense? So your body is a system. You can change the system, which is how your body operates. That's challenging, okay? Because remember, there's a lot of things that happen automatically in our body. And if it would be helpful, because I mean, I've done a lot of work on retraining your brain, the conscious brain, the subconscious brain, what some folks also call the superconscious brain, which is like the energy fields around us, which for us is spirit, right? Like if you're more spiritual, it's going to be spirit. If you're more scientific, it's going to be the energy field. And if you're more on the woo-woo side, it's going to be your vibration and the possibly energy, but energy and vibes, that kind of the quantum fields. All of this is real. And I'm living proof. I'm living proof of what happens when you can manifest our thoughts and our beliefs into actual actions and things here on earth. And we match that up with the energetic spiritual component, because faith and belief is so powerful that it literally can either kill you or bring new life to you. Make sense? And I'm very blessed because it's breathed new life into me. I didn't want to repeat the pattern. 3 car accidents. Gosh, like how long would it take before and I thought I was pretty smart, right? So I want you to think, if you have the same system, right? And you can't change the system. Now you can, but it takes a lot of work, okay? When we try to change the system, force it, it takes a lot of work and effort. But if you change the inputs going into the system, that's everything that you take in, everything, your food, right? So your diet, your exercise, the things that influence your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions, the people that you're around, the things that you're exposed to, the things that you see, the things that you hear, the things that you say, these are all part of the inputs and outputs that we put through our system. If you can change all of those, and it feels like a lot of work at first until you realize that's actually the shortcut, because most people are trying to change the system. You're trying to change who you are. You're trying to change your body from like the outside in. And that's the hard way. That is the hardest way to do it. It would be like you trying to fix your computer and it's got a virus. And instead of going in and updating the software, right, from the inside out, you go in and you take apart your entire computer looking for that one piece. And you're like, oh, I can't find it now. Well, yeah, because you're not going to be able to fix it doing that. Does this make sense? Like you might eventually, but you're taking like the long way around the mountain. You're probably going to have to like round it up a few times before you even can figure out if that's possible. You're forcing things to change by the mechanics and the structure. And sometimes it doesn't even correlate, right? It's not even a causation. It's irrelevant, but we're going about it backwards because we don't want to look in the mirror. And maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. Right? The window versus the mirror. And this is a concept that I got from a very dear friend of mine. So it's not mine, but I love the analogy. Okay. So let's recap the 4 biggest lessons. And I have so many more, but I wanted to keep this fairly shortish. Thanks for hanging out with me. So number 1, you are not your circumstance, your situation, or your diagnosis. Okay. Nobody gets to say what you receive and what you don't receive, what you accept and what you don't. Number 2, that your illness or whatever your obstacle of choice is, it does not define who you are or your identity. You get to decide that. So don't say I am this or I have this. So you'll notice I use very specific language to describe the situation and the circumstance, right? I have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I have been diagnosed with this. I am not my disease. It does not define me. It does not control me. It is not in charge of me and what I can and cannot do. Number three, your brain is a supercomputer and it will help you to achieve the results that you want if you give it the right inputs. If you actually believe that your brain can change, your brain owns and operates the system. So it's in charge. And if you can help your brain with the right inputs, with the right questions, with the right areas of focus, it will actually get the answers for you. Okay. Some of those answers are directly inside. Actually, I'd say 80% of the answers that you need to come from inside. And you don't need to work that hard. There's a shortcut. You just let them go. Number four, your body is a system. So you can either change the system, AKA force, hard way, still works, hard way, or you change the input. And I chose to do the input because I was changing the system for 4 years with doctors, with chiro, with physio, you name it. I've tried it. I've done it. And they all work to an extent. But then it was only enough for me to survive and just barely by the skin of my teeth. And the minute that I decided that I was refusing to focus on pain and illness as the thing that I needed to fix, and instead I was just going to live life. And if pain came, so be it, because pain will come. Joy will come, peace will come, all of the emotions will come. When we're afraid of what it is that we're trying to move away from, it will chase after us and it will persist, because what we resist will persist. And that's why the more that we surrender and let go, the easier it is for us to just flow and move through it, recognizing that it's here, but just for a moment. That moment may be painful as all heck. Absolutely. I understand this. I've gone through it, which is why I can tell you this, having been through the fire and on the other side. It's way better on the other side if you just stop fighting. And that's hard to do. It is. It is really hard to do. But it is so much easier than trying to force your way through with brute force, with brute strength, because it takes a lot out of you. And when you're trying to live and survive, then you've pushed and pushed. You really don't have enough left to enjoy your life. Make sense? Okay. Okay. Sandra says, I also avoid saying my disease and say the disease. Exactly. You don't claim ownership over stuff that you don't want to own. This kind of stuff, right? And this is not about, what's that? What are those words called? There's a lot of woke terms. I'm not very up on the woke stuff. But a lot of times people are like, oh, that's, toxic positivity. No, it's not. This is really about who you are created to be. And I know that for me, my maker, I'm going to be very careful about how I word this. I don't believe that God wants us to suffer and to be in lack, right? By his stripes, we are healed. But at the same token, then we beg the question, so then why do we have illnesses? Well, because we're human and because we are not perfect and we are attracted to suffering. And sometimes we invite these things in because it serves us. And that was some of the things that I've done. If I had chronic illness, people could take care of me and I didn't have to ask for help as much. Because as somebody who did a lot for others, it was very uncomfortable for me to ask for help. And I felt like I needed an excuse. And that's what that did for me. And the minute that I realized I don't need to have a disease to ask for help, and more importantly, to receive help, I could actually receive it without being resentful. Does this make sense? And so I'm not going to go into all of this, but right here, right now, what I wanted to share is that for all of us who may have some sort of disease or diagnosis that we've received or not fully received and said, yes, I believe that might be true, but it's not my truth, right? It's not my identity. It's not how I'm going to live my life. That I had a client once that said, I can accept your diagnosis, but I don't receive your prognosis. meaning, all of the doom and gloom that sometimes comes with the diagnosis of you're not going to survive, like this is not going to happen for you, or these are some of the symptoms that you're going to encounter, that you can actually actively reject, that the outcomes that come from the diagnosis that you've received, whatever that looks like, is not your lot in life, that you actually are going to actively, proactively choose alternative options so that you are going to live a bigger and fuller life than what that might label you, that container that you need to be in, the box that you're going to live in, right? And so that's where, for all of us, we have opportunities to figure out what's the lesson that I need to learn. Sometimes it's a generational curse. Maybe it's a bloodline thing where generation after generation after generation, you have heart disease, you have diabetes, you have certain things where it's like, well, when will it be enough? When will it be enough that your generation realizes that there's certain foods that you can't eat, that there's certain traits or behaviors that we're predisposed to, that we have certain addictions that just aren't healthy, right? At some point, somebody has to stand up and say, I'm going to choose a different way. I'm going to change the system, not from the outside in, right? But from the inside out. Make different choices, see different opportunities, take different wisdom, right? Learn different experiences from other people that, hey, they don't have all of that over there. What are they doing differently that I can take into my family, that I can take into my business, that I can take into my whatever it is? Make sense? Okay. Okay. Yes, the word curses. Exactly. Right. So again, this went a lot longer than I was planning because I was like, oh, this will be a short one. So I might do more like this that are more like personally based. And I would challenge you, right? Because we all have the ability to change our lives. And it could be just by sharing your story. And if nothing else, the greatest reward that I get as a teacher and as a speaker and somebody who has even a smaller platform, right? Because we all have a platform. If you can influence one person, you can influence many. And so at the end of the day, I encourage you to pay it forward, right? Share this video, but also speak your truth, right? Speak something from your own experience. Share a lesson that you have learned, because this is how we stop those patterns of behaviors that we're all struggling with as humanity. As humanity, as humans living a shared collective experience, we are more similar than we're dissimilar. And when we realize that there are things that other people have gone through that we can learn from, we can glean the wisdom if we are surrendered and coachable and actively looking for it, rather than that, control and pride of I got to go through it. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to earn it. All of these things just replicate these poor patterns that we do not have to have, because we are destined for more than the people before us. And I'd hate for the generations that have gone by, that have worked hard, to look back on what we're experiencing and go, why are they going around the mountain again? Like, why are they doing this again? Like, we already broke all of this. We already stopped all of this. We already switched all of this. This is why we work so hard for our children, our grandchildren, and our generations to come. And they're looking down and saying, well, they've gotten themselves into a pickle. Like, why do they keep doing this? And sometimes it's just a matter of a choice, right? And that's why I encourage you, choose something different. Choose to share your story. Choose to let somebody know the shortcut, because that way we're all going to win. We're all going to rise. We can all get further, faster, and better. Make sense? Okay. Jeannie, I see your comments here as well. Tap into wisdom gained by others of what they came through exactly, right? Amazing. Okay. So with that, we are out. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.